All right. I'm calling the meeting to order at 4:49 PM. Alderman O'Neill,
Present.
Alderman Smith Brown.
Present.
Next on the agenda, I'm making a motion to approve the agenda.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion passes.
Next is the election of chair.
Next on the agenda is the election of chair.
I nominate Daisha Conte as chair of Housing and Human Welfare Committee.
I second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion passed.
Motion passes. Then
Next up on the agenda, appointments and reappointments.
next on the agenda is the appointments and reappointments. Is this the, I gotta see the AP 1026 appointment, Ms. Sharon Elliott for the Housing Authority.
Is she in?
I don't know. Is Ms. Sharon Elliott here? Do I have a motion to approve? Favorable motion to approve?
I'll give a favorable recommendation for the reappointment of Ms. Sharon Elliott.
I will
Second.
second that reappointment.
Okay.
All in favor?
All in favor?
Say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Motion passed.
Motion passes.
The next one is general discussion, so you can say ID Bloomsbury Square rehab briefing. Is everybody in the room to talk?
I don't know if anybody, is somebody here?
I don't know.
Oh, we're gonna ask, okay. Next on the agenda is ID 1826 Bloomsbury Square briefing. Is anyone here from Bloomsbury Square? Oh. Welcome, Ms. Maddox Evans, if you can state your name and who you're representing.
Thank you for inviting me here today. I'm Melissa Maddox Evans, Executive Director, CEO of the Housing Authority, City of Annapolis.
Welcome.
Thank you.
You're here to talk.
You're here to talk about Bloomsbury Square, correct?
Correct. So I just wanted to provide the commission with a update on our redevelopment activities for Bloomsbury Square. The Housing Authority intends to redevelop the property, which is 51 units, from the project-based housing model to the the public housing model to the project-based housing model, which is under the Housing Choice Voucher Program. So we're moving from public housing to the voucher program. HUD allows housing authorities to do that. And in doing that, we are allowed to pursue different measures to help provide upgrades to the properties as needed. Because the properties are in relatively good condition, although they are getting older now, we will be pursuing a moderate rehabilitation of the site rather than a substantial rehabilitation. So it will encompass upgrades to the interior of the units, the entire inside of the unit. So for example, countertops, cabinetry, flooring, any of the bathroom items that may need to be upgraded. We will also be upgrading structural issues, windows, for example, exterior, any of the brickwork that's there, dealing with any erosion issues, tree work, for example. So there'll be a number of things on the sites that we will be addressing. And all of what determines what we will be addressing are a number of surveys that we conduct. We conduct environmental surveys, which we're in the process of doing and have already done some. Resident surveys, which we've had a number of resident meetings in which we incorporate input from the residents that live there about items that they would like to see upgraded. And we conduct surveys that are required by the state. State officials come to, and have already come to tour the site. They provide recommendations as to what needs to be upgraded. So for example, they have mentioned all of the things I have already mentioned, but in addition, they provided input about upgrading the playground equipment, for example, for the children. We receive input from the city, from the county. These are all of the entities that will be providing assistance in some way, shape, or form through our redevelopment process. The county has committed $1 million of funding, home funding, which is great, towards this redevelopment effort. We keep the city informed on a weekly basis about our upgrades and our progress in our redevelopment. We have partnered with the community housing partners to enter into this redevelopment program. They're a nonprofit entity. They are also assisting us with redeveloping the Robinwood site. And so they, last year, they applied for tax credits. We applied for 4% tax credits on this property, and we were awarded. So we will be pursuing 4% tax credits with this project, as well as a number of sources of funding. So once the redevelopment is finished, the entire site will be, like I said, on the voucher program. We anticipate it taking at least maybe a couple years to do this type of redevelopment. Our hope is to close on this, on the financial aspects of this deal towards the end of this year. So that is a very ambitious plan, but is a plan that the state and all the entities, the county is on board with and supports. Once we close on the property, the new development partner, they have their own management entity that is part of their firm. They will be managing the day-to-day aspects of the property. So HACA would no longer be doing the property management aspect. We would still be administering the vouchers that are on the site. So similar to how we are still connected to Aubrey Courts, Annapolis Gardens, Morris H. Blum, and Wilborn Estates would be a similar affiliation that we would have with Bloomsbury Square. And I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have, but that's a broad overview of where we are. Once we do close on the property, about 90 days after that is the earliest we would be able to engage in the actual renovations of the project. And so, so we anticipate starting renovations next year, maybe sometime in the spring, early, as the winter ends. And so this will be in terms of resident relocation, we are exploring a number of options right now. Usually at a site, there can be a number of vacancies that you can move residents to while you're renovating units, but at Bloomsbury Square, it's a very popular site. And so we have most times 0 vacancy, or at most maybe 1 unit that's vacant and being turned, and then will ultimately be leased up. And so residents will be able to temporarily relocate to a number of different options, to either another one of our public housing sites temporarily, or they can stay with relatives if they'd like. Or we're also now looking at different extended stay options for residents. So we hope the actual renovations for any particular unit doesn't take more than maybe 6 to 8 weeks. So it's not a very long time, but it is some time that they would be out of their unit. We asked residents about the type of arrangements that they would like or prefer. Most of them wanted to prefer to be relocated off-site while the renovations were taking place. We were considering an option where we tried to do the majority of the renovations during the day and have a host unit, or a host, sort of a accommodation for them to go to, convert the community center to a space people can stay in during the day, and then they can return to their homes, in the evening. But most residents said they would not rather do that. They would just rather leave off-site and then come back when the unit is ready, which we understand that too. But we wanted to explain the different options to them and let them know what was available. So as with all of our relocation projects, the Housing Authority and developer are obligated to pay for relocation costs and pay for like security deposits or anything else, moving expenses, anything that's involved in the actual move. And we have set stipends that are set by the federal government under the Uniform Relocation Act that specify, let's say, how the amount of the stipend for a 1-bedroom or 2-bedroom, or 3-bedroom family, for example. So that's what we go by. So, but having said that, I'll be happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. 2 questions. You answered one. I think I was going to ask you fiscal year, calendar year, but calendar year by the end of 2026, you'll have.
We're
the
shooting
financing?
by November is our goal for closing. Having said that, it's pretty ambitious, so it may be more towards the beginning of the year. If we don't meet there's a certain cutoff time in November of which we're allowed to close. And so if we don't meet that deadline, then it'll be pushed to January or February by the state.
And as far as the residents that are currently there, do they have first options on spaces once everything's rented, or does it go into a lottery? How does it work to fill them once they're all renovated?
In terms of the new unit, what they return to?
Correct.
So when we do, what we do is individual surveys and counseling with each resident to find out what the needs are of that particular family. The first programmatic need is to right-size the family, meaning to move them into a unit that correctly reflects their actual household size, because a lot of times household sizes change during the course of tenancy. If for whatever reason it's not likely that that is to be achieved, then we move to ask the resident what is their preference in terms of would they like to return to their actual unit. It is highly likely that many residents will be able to return to the unit that they have now, just because the site is so small and there's not very many other units to move them to. We also have to consider disability and reasonable accommodation issues. So for example, if someone's currently in what's called a 504 unit or an accessible unit, and they don't have a person with disabilities in their family, then they will be most likely required to move to a non-504 unit so that a person with disabilities can actually move to the unit that they are able to have the accommodation in. So there may be slight changes. But because the site is so small, it's only 51 units, it's highly likely that the majority of folks will be able to move back to the unit they're in now, provided that's where they want to move. And so we also take into account vacancies that happen. Sometimes even when we do the renovations, there are some residents that don't want to return. So if we have vacancies as that happens, then we match the needs of the family according to the type of unit that it is. And we try to accommodate as best as possible while we're doing this move and transition. So a number of those things are happening while we do the relocation.
All right. So somebody that's there basically under public housing and now it's being turned into voucher housing, do they automatically have a voucher now? How does that work?
That's a great question. They have a right to participate in the voucher program. That is the right that is automatic when we do a redevelopment program. However, if during the course of this, someone no longer qualifies for public housing or the voucher program, they may not have the right to return because they have qualified out of the program in its entirety. So they have to still meet the income criteria to participate in the program. And those are things that we go over with residents, what their options are, should that be the case. Once we identify if there are persons that no longer qualify for the program at all, then we help them explore other options, which may be off-site or at another housing option, another development. We help them and direct them to the type of housing that they actually do qualify for now. So we still give them that counseling and guidance. There are some units when we do the conversion that will be identified as a non-subsidized unit, meaning once we convert to the tax credit program, every single unit, not just the person, but the actual unit must qualify and have income restrictions tied to it. And so if for whatever reason the person doesn't, they'd still be allowed to return, but they would have to be, paying closer to a more of a fair market rate for that particular unit. Once they move out, that unit is then added to the voucher program, and then a person that meets affordability criteria is allowed to move in. And so, so they will have housing regardless of their status, but there may be some differences, but it really all depends on if they're income qualified or not.
And is that something you find out in this process of?
Correct. So now, as we're doing, part of getting to the closing is conducting those analyses, because all of that is tied into the financing of the project. Because investors finance the units depending on the income criteria of the occupants of the unit, not just of the other characteristics of the site itself. So we have to provide the income qualifying information to the state, to HUD, to the county, to all of our stakeholders, to the tax credit investors, in order for the us to qualify for the funding. And so, yes, we have to conduct that analysis, and we try to determine that pretty early in the process because it could take a number of months working with a family to help them explore what are the next set of options for them during this process. And so most likely definitely by the spring, we would start those conversations. In fact, we're already we're starting the survey work now with the residents, and based on that information, following the survey, then we conduct individual counseling sessions with each family, and a caseworker helps them explore the different options available to them.
Thank you.
Questions?
So thank you, Melissa, for coming out today. Through this information that you've shared, I also would like to hear, if you would be willing to share too, how many have you already completed, maybe how many surveys you've already completed, if you do know that number, as well as how many families may be impacted through this alteration from the voucher to this private-public partnership is what it sounds like. So let's be clear about this. This is a private-public partnership. And so if you can share that, as well as how many HACA properties at this point, now that this is transitioning to a private-public partnership, will be under private-public partnerships for the people.
Sure. So there's 51 families at the site. And so that's the number of families that will be impacted by the transition. Every resident meeting that we have had to date, we've surveyed the residents and we've collected their feedback. Part of this process, HUD requires you to poll the residents, ask them questions, ask them for feedback, and to present that in writing to HUD, what the actual comments were, and to show that we've incorporated the comments into the planning of the project. And so we've done a number of those. We're doing one now that is online. So the one that we're doing now, so I would say we've had at least 3 in-person survey information collecting sessions, just particular to redevelopment. We're now doing an online one. And it's not just online. We're also handing out paper versions of the survey, which is a much more in-depth survey. And so after we collect that information, we'll then begin the case management, which will be more intensive and particular to certain families. So once, in terms of the total number of properties that we have a private public partnership with, so far there's Wilbourn Estates, Obery Courts, Annapolis Gardens, Morris H. Blum are the properties that have already converted. In fact, we'll be planning our grand opening for Morris H. Blum. It gets a little warmer sometime in early spring. We are in the process of converting Robinwood, Bloomsbury Square, also Eastport Terrace, Harbor House. So all of our properties will be under some sort of private-public partnership structure once we have converted all of our sites. Yes.
Can I just jump in? I just want to clarify, these are all RAD conversions, is that correct?
The majority are. The only site that is not a RAD conversion but has similar RAD rights attached to the site is Wilbourn Estates. That is technically what's called a Section 18 demolition disposition project. And so we decided to adopt RAD conversion rights onto the site, even though it was technically not a RAD conversion. RAD stands for Rental Assistance Demonstration program, which is a program created by Congress and administered by HUD since 2012, which allows housing authorities to convert its public housing portfolio to a private-public partnership in order to leverage the funding that is attached to these projects that we could not otherwise do so if it just stayed in the public housing program, because leveraging is not allowed once HUD has deeds of trust attached to property. So essentially, it releases HUD's deed of trust, its lien on our properties, to allow us the financial flexibility to capitalize on our properties so we can keep them in good repair and in good shape. As we're doing these renovations, we are providing upgrades to the site and to the property. So that's the ultimate goal, is to improve the living conditions of the units for the residents. And as you might have heard, Congress is not funding the public housing program as it traditionally has had in prior decades. And with the new budget released today, with a projected 14% decrease in the public housing operating budget, it is definitely not investing in public housing. However, in the voucher program, that's a 9% increase in funding. So housing authority industry experts have tracked this funding allocation pattern for years to determine it's best to move from the traditional public housing model, if housing authorities are able to move towards hopefully a more stable funding model under the voucher program. It also allows residents the opportunity in this process to utilize a voucher on-site, meaning the vouchers are tied to the new unit that they're moving back into, or to take a tenant-based voucher and move off-site and have what's called choice mobility and allow them to move wherever they please that will accept a voucher, which sometimes it is very difficult, even if someone is on the voucher wait list, to receive a voucher, just because one, wait lists aren't open very often, and two, it's very difficult to utilize a voucher once you get one. And even if you are on a wait list, it can take years to receive a voucher from a housing authority. So because we do the relocation and because of the imposition it puts on the families, HUD allows us to give them the right to request a tenant-based voucher through this process, and they can receive a voucher much more quickly than even if they were on our regular voucher wait list.
I got a question. So I know that y'all doing Robinwood along with Bloomsbury Square. Mm-hmm. Is the processes and the surveys and all of those discussions going to be the same processes for Robinwood too? I know it's way bigger and you got to do a lot more work, so.
Yes, but essentially the process is the same, of which I described earlier. And we're doing that also now at Robinwood.
I got one more question. With the defunding and funds, how is that going to affect the residents that are already there, even with the transition of the new housing development?
In terms of if the programs aren't funded the way they, through Congress, you mean?
Yes.
Or, okay, that's a really, really great question. So what we do is, once we receive definitiveness on what Congress is allocating for these programs and what HUD is going to distribute, that determines the speed in which we can redevelop and the staging. So, and depending on the level of outside funding we can receive from private investment, from local investment, state, county, city investment also determines the pace in which we can redevelop. So let's say if we know that there could be significant concerns for funding on the federal level, then it's up to local partners to step up to bridge whatever gap is necessary to ensure that the redevelopment still happens. As we go through this stage in which we're determining what is going to be in what's called the capital stack, how much funding is being contributed by what entity, this is when those type of conversations are actually occurring. In every single project that we've had, there's been a funding gap of some sort. Fortunately, the state of Maryland has been very generally supportive of affordable housing programs, especially once we're engaged in one, and has for us stepped up when there has been a gap. Like for example, during COVID, we were in the midst of our Newtown 20 to Wellborn Estates and redevelopment. And because of lumber costs, that resulted in a $3 million gap instantly that was not contemplated because COVID wasn't contemplated when we started redevelopment. And so the state assisted us with that funding gap that no one could have contemplated in order for us to get that job done. So I'm just using that as an example. But during this process, we meet very frequently to discuss all of the variables and changes, funding-wise, political, anything, environmental, anything that can impact the pace of the overall redevelopment and our ability to complete it.
May I ask a question?
Yes.
Thank you. Thanks so much for being here, Director Maddox Evans. Really appreciate all the stuff you're doing to modernize and improve our residents' lives. I got one boring question, and then mostly I want to focus on the relocation. Outside, architecturally, is it going to look different after it's rehabbed or more or less the same?
Not likely.
Okay.
Because we are in a historic area.
Yeah.
And there are a number of approvals that we are going to have to obtain from the city's historic society, from the state historic society with regards to Bloomsbury Square. We don't anticipate that there'll be significant changes to the style of the exterior. So most of what we're doing is integrity and structural related. We love the style. We think it's very beautiful.
Yeah.
But it is over 20 years old, and there are things that need to be addressed now. And so in order to ensure longevity.
Gotcha. Thank you. On the other side of things, on people moving, so I think the most fundamental concern that I hear from people is this particular site, there's been so many kind of false starts and are we going to get it or are we not going to get it? There's this whole history behind it I'm sure you're aware of. And so I think there's a lot of sort of mistrust. For this, a lot of times it feels like, maybe to oversimplify, in some other scenarios it's like, we're worried about our house is going to get taken from us and we're going to get put into some kind of public housing community. This is almost like people are worried, we're going to get our public housing community taken from us and put into some other house. So
Yeah.
I guess my most fundamental question is, how are you guys working to bridge that trust gap in this particular situation?
Yeah, that's a good question. So, and those are similar concerns for every single project we have.
Maybe it's not as unique as I think it
Every
is.
single one, and they're understandable. The history of Bloomsbury Square has been interesting because this is the second time that it has undergone a major redevelopment. The first time was because the state wanted to acquire the property for its parking facility for its workers. So it initiated the move per se, and it significantly funded that move in order to achieve that. So this is the second time that a major upgrade is happening. However, this time the site is not being moved. The first time was actually more traumatic and more significant because the actual location moved. Now we're just renovating the interior and the exterior. So what we're trying to help residents understand that we have heard all of your complaints about conditions of the unit. In order to actually renovate the unit to the extent that you want us to renovate the unit, you can't live there for a time. We will have ceilings open, floors exposed, plumbing, electrical. There's no way for you to physically live in the space. That is the only reason why you have to temporarily relocate, because we're actually trying to do what you have been requesting all of these years. And that's why we try to help them be as involved in the planning of the process as possible so they can feel that it's their renovation, not something that's happening to them, but actually something that they have been requesting. And yes, that comes with a significant inconvenience of being out of your unit for a number of weeks or for several months, while you're doing. So we get that part and all the trouble that comes with those type of moves. We try to help them understand what their rights are during this process. We share with them what the federal regulations are about them having the right to return, that legally we have to ensure that they have the right to return, that it's a legal requirement. It's not something that the housing authority thinks is nice to do, or we do think it's nice to do, but that's not the reason why we are legally required to, as long as you're in good standing and you're doing all you need to do as a resident, you're not currently violating the lease or subject to eviction or, not paying your rent, or you're doing your part as a resident, then yes, you have a right under our lease and program requirements to return. That's what the rental assistance demonstration program is. It's different than in years back, there was a program called Hope 6, in which which is sort of the predecessor of the RAD program. And in that program, there were additional criteria that a resident had to meet or that a project had to meet, and only a certain number of persons could come back. And that's historically, though Hope 6 did not happen here in Annapolis, and so it happened in major cities, other cities. But because of the lessons learned in Hope 6, HUD made changes to the regulations under the RAD program and made the resident rights stronger through this. So for example, in the RAD program, residents still, even after the property's converted, they still have a right to a grievance, which you don't have a right to a grievance in a regular landlord-tenant relationship in the private market. But at a RAD property, you do. You have a right to a tenant council to create one. You don't have a right to that necessarily in the private market, but at a RAD property, you do. So there are a number of things that are very similar and embedded in the public housing program and in the voucher program that are still available to tenants after conversion. And so we try to help them understand those rights. And the more vocal they are, and honestly, the more involved they are, the more the fears are addressed
Yeah.
in its way. So that really, so we encourage residents, if you're concerned about anything, please come to the tenant meetings and voice your concerns as we're rolling this information out, because that's where we can hear what the concerns are, and to not presume that we know what all the concerns are as we're going through this process.
Can I just piggyback on this for a second, though? It kind of goes back to my question or your discussion earlier about, as they're going through the process, if they find that they're no longer eligible, income eligible or whatnot, where in the process are they finding that out? Because the biggest concern I'm hearing from people is that I'm going through all of this and I'm, being a part of this, and I'm going to get to move back into this beautiful new unit that's completely renovated. And oh, by the way, at the very last minute, they pulled out from under me and I'm no longer eligible. That's what I hear over and over again.
So we have already spoken with residents that we consider to be, that we have concerns that are not compliant with our programs. We try to reach out to those residents very early when we're starting this process, meaning we're 2 or 3 years out, way before we get to the closing. So that, for example, by the time we got to the Wilborn closing, there was only one resident that didn't meet the income criteria. And I think it was pretty much the same at Blum, maybe one.
Because you moved them out prior to that, or?
No, not necessarily. That we're informed that, okay, you no longer qualify for the program. You're going to have to, let's talk about what other housing arrangements would work for you or whatever. I'm saying that to say the amount of work that we do and the amount of outreach and counseling that we do during this process is significant. So any resident that has any concern about their standing in our program or their own compliance issues, we encourage them to reach out to the management team right away. We call each resident that we have any kind of concern about one-on-one. But there may be things that we don't know about that a resident is concerned about. So we ask them to call us also. And the worst thing a resident can do is not address a concern that they may have. That's not going to be helpful to them. Now, we have worked with pretty much every single issue under the sun that we have come across with regards to resident issues. And so, because it's our goal for everybody to return and to not lose anyone. And so, we do that. But at every single meeting, we have a list and we, have our management team and say, please talk to us right now. Let's set up a time so that you can talk with whomever you need to talk to answer questions. And sometimes residents have concerns of things that are not of concern. Like they may think something is significant, but it's really not, to their tenancy. And then we help them understand, no, that's not going to disqualify you from the program. So sometimes there's just misunderstandings or misconceptions that need to be cleared up. One thing we do ask residents to do is to report every person you intend to be on your lease when we do this transition. Because the only persons that are eligible for a voucher for that household are the persons that are listed on the lease. So if you have someone that's been living with you, it's time to get them on your lease now. If you have someone whose income's not being captured, it's time to capture that income now. So if your recertification has been delayed, or if you've not completed it yet, you need to complete that now, because the subsidy that we determine for your unit is based on your recertification. So if you haven't been providing current information, now's the time to get current as we're determining the amount of subsidies that are being attached to each unit. So it's actually a great opportunity to clean up a lot of issues that might be outstanding for a particular family and household. So we're not just physically moving people, we're programmatically ensuring compliance on the housing authority and
Do you happen to have, thanks again, Phyllis. Do you happen to have, I know you mentioned 14% decrease in the budget, 9% increase for the vouchers. What is your scope of understanding around this? What concerns do you have, your team has, our team, as we're facing these budget cuts, as well as what asks do you have of us as city alderpersons or government, if you will, as we transition to that too?
yeah. Well, great. I appreciate you asking. As with federally funded programs, there's always elements of uncertainty. Those elements have been heightened in recent months. One of the most challenging aspects we have with regards to particularly our properties that may not be moving towards a financial closing in the next year or two is support with regards to the capital needs of these properties until we can get to the point of significant renovation. Because the needs are still significant and will remain significant until we can do a wholesale renovation. And so through periodically, we will present either funding requests or requests for some sort of support to the city and other entities to assist us as we're going through the renovation and redevelopment process, because this process takes several years to do, and people have housing needs right now. So the most significant thing I think a local municipality can do is embrace the fact that the federal government is not as stable as in prior years with regards to supporting public housing, and to have considerations of that as they're doing their budget, as they're doing, the needs, even not just the housing needs, the physical housing needs, but programmatic needs associated with housing. So rental assistance programs, for example, other social programs that could assist persons to be more stable in their housing situations, workforce programs. So, because for us, housing is what we do, but in the scope of the economic and socioeconomic spectrum, it is sort of the end of the spectrum. There's so many things that need to be working properly on a local level for persons to be able to have stable housing. And I think oftentimes housing is looked at, if we just redevelop the units, everything will be fine. And that's not the case. So we have to make sure that there are programs in place to support the people that are in the housing for the overall housing program to be successful. And I know that's very vague, but we will definitely be coming before you more in the future with more specific asks as we go through this process. But from our standpoint as housing providers, it would be helpful if local leaders understood housing as just infrastructure that needs to be supported as it does, our waste, stormwater management or environmental issues. And it's just, housing is just one of the things that need to be supported. And so, so that would be something that I would ask for the commission to consider.
Harry has another question.
Sorry, I'm back. Thanks for your answer before. I think, people are worried to what Alderwoman O'Neill was saying. But maybe what I'm hearing is part of our role is to tell them why they don't need to be worried and really amplifying that message rather than making sure we feed into those fears.
Or if they are worried, they can contact us.
Sure, yeah.
And
we
find
can be
out
a partner,
whatever.
too. Hopefully, the remaining questions I have are hopefully fairly straightforward. You mentioned it's going to take 6 to 8 weeks, roughly, for redoing each unit. That's how long people are going to be out. About how many do you think how many people will be in that situation at any given time? Or how many units, I should ask, will be in that situation at any given time?
We're trying to do a building at a time. So, and depending on, so I would say maybe 10 families or
Okay.
so,
Gotcha. And that, yeah. and
Around
timing
that
makes
number.
sense. Sure.
less
Thank
or
you.
more.
I had one other thing. Oh, just, and this is probably something that feels a little unique, but isn't actually. A lot of folks there have physical disabilities. As you're thinking about relocation, how are you guys considering that? Especially if you were mentioning like extended stays. Is that
Right.
in response to that? How are you thinking about that?
So once we conduct the interviews with the individual families and find out what their accommodation needs are, we then determine the type of temporary housing that would be suitable. So we would have to assist them with the type of accommodations that will meet their physical or any other type of challenge. So we have to take that into consideration.
Thanks so much for having this, Chairwoman Conti. That was all my questions.
Thank you. I just have one more question, and it's a little bit going to put you on the spot, and I'm sorry for it. But one of the things that I keep hearing about is people being able to contact HACA offices and the amount of time that offices are open and available. I've had several residents say that they've made appointments only to go and take off work to go and find out that nobody was actually there during the appointment time. Can you talk a little bit about the office hours and the availability of your personnel for people to come and ask questions such as
Is this
that?
just generally for sites, or is it for Bloomsbury Square, or?
It's a little bit of both, some Harbor House, some Blueberry Square.
Yeah.
We've invited other property managers as well. I know that on Oberry Court, it's been a pretty major issue.
Yeah. So the Bloomsbury Square office is open twice a week. It has been for quite some time. It is best that residents do set an appointment if they have some important, matters to discuss. We'll make sure that if there's an emergency, a manager might have to be called away for a moment, but they usually return or place signage on the door to indicate the return. But I will make sure the management staff, does a better job in making folks aware as to the office availability. We have had to do reduce walk-ins at Eastport Terrace and Harbor House for the time being, since we started the Y Head Start program at the Eastport Community Center. There have been a few instances of some inappropriate conduct, I would say, that has resulted in there being some threats issued to staff and to some of the workers at the Y Head Start program by some individuals. So we have moved the appointments for Eastport Terrace and Harbor House to the main office. So if they would like to meet with their manager, they just contact the manager and they set an appointment. And since our main office is on the same site as Eastport Terrace and Harbor House, and they can have the appointment at our main office. And we are doing that for the time being. And so it is not likely that someone will be able to walk up to the Eastport Community Center and just go in, because we're running a school there, or the Y is rather, but they can make an appointment, and information about that is on the door if they'd like to set up an appointment. And they can always, our main office is always open, and there's always someone there answering the phone at the front desk. So if anyone has any problem contacting a local management office, they can always call our main office and submit their question or request to meet with somebody or file their complaint or get a message to whomever. Because our line is always being manned. And they can always walk in to our main office that is open every day except to the public, except Fridays. We're still open, we're not open to the public on Fridays. So Monday through Thursday, they can also walk in and say, I'd like to set an appointment with whomever, and the front desk person will connect them to do so. Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Melissa.
All right, well, thank you very much.
Okay. Next on the agenda is ID 2926, affordable housing.
Thank you. I'm not Terry Bond. I'm sitting in for her. She couldn't make it. My name is Patrick Sheridan. My name is Patrick Sheridan. I'm one of the other 6 members of the Affordable Housing and Community Equity Development Commission, which is one of the longest commission names I've seen. But I just wanted to let you know a little bit about what our commission does, which serves at the pleasure of your committee, and also some of the things we've been working on and things we see coming up. Just a little bit of background on it. There's, as I mentioned, there's 6 of us on the committee. We're all Annapolis residents. All of us have backgrounds in housing policy, housing development, resident services, government affordable housing programs, both state and federal, and also in community development programs. Generally, we're appointed by the council and the mayor, but recommendation from the Housing and Human Welfare Committee. So again, we serve at your pleasure, quite frankly. What we've done, or what we've seen as far as our purpose goes, has been to assist your committee in reviewing and providing comment on proposed legislation. We also provide comments on some of the proposed awards for city-received HUD CDBG funding. And we also work on researching and keeping abreast of affordable housing and community development trends. Also then aiding in developing legislation that furthers affordable housing and community development goals, and in particular also helping implement the Annapolis Comprehensive Plan that's been just within the last year finalized. What we can do is, of course, provide assistance to you and the committee on current proposed legislation, and it does come before the council and the committee, such as on assisted accessory dwelling units, ADUs, or even short-term rentals, something along that line. We've also had a suggestion that might be helpful, that we could assist in developing an educational reach-out program or campaign about affordable housing that we could use with the public to help explain the benefits of achieving, higher density or slightly higher density in housing, and also providing examples of places where that has happened before. And one of the things that your committee may want to consider too is revisiting, it was workforce housing legislation that happened probably about 2-3 years ago. It was Bill 40-22. And what it did would provide incentives to build housing that would be affordable to those with incomes between 60 and 100% of median income. It did make it as far as a first reading. There were comments both from public and city staff that we were working on incorporating, but the legislation was subsequently tabled for the projected release of the comprehensive plan to make sure that it did meet what some of the goals of the plan were. So it is something we see some benefit there. Tracks pretty closely with a lot of other types of programs, such as ADUs and that, but what we were contemplating would be more along the lines of infill type housing that would be duplexes, triplexes, something along those lines, rather than large-scale multifamily housing. But those are just some examples of some of the things that we generally look at. We work closely with the city staff on making sure we're keeping abreast of what's going on and also providing suggestions. And we're open to anything else the committee would like to have us work on. So, have any questions? I'd be happy to answer them.
Hey, well, welcome. Thank you so much for your volunteerism, serving on this, and to the other members who are not here, thank you all as well. Did you have any thoughts or feedback thus far from your meetings? Have you already met prior to this to discuss some of the things you want to bring to our attention thus far, as well as aside from that? I'll go ahead with that question. That way I can just come back.
I think, the workforce housing legislation was something we thought would be good to bring up, but also whether there were ways that we could assist with reviewing the ADU proposals that had been proposed. I know we've also looked at the county's programs. A lot of them track very closely, of course, with what the city's been doing. So, it's been a situation where we've been able to look at some of those programs and make suggestions as to how it could be used here in Annapolis. And again, we've worked with the county also in providing them with some suggestions. So we're not matched perfectly either with each other, but we did see some big benefits there. And one thing I should also mention too, though, another role I also have is I'm vice chairman of the Housing Authority's Board of Commissioners. So I'm sort of the liaison between this committee and the Housing Authority also.
Okay. The other piece to that was going to be, do you all have any thoughts or plans surrounding a vision to bring more equity into the housing developments here in the city, or just in general for housing equity? Do you all have maybe a layout of what you'd like to see over the next 2 to 3, 4 years? I know your terms are not too extensive, but they're pretty decent amount of time of terms. So do you have that at all, aside from the reports that you provide to us on an annual basis?
Well, I think in that regard, we're more reacting to what, your committee proposes, what we've seen in the comprehensive plan, to try to, make sure that we can help you meet those goals in doing that. Okay. Okay,
Yeah, thank you.
thank you.
We'll update you on those things.
Next on the agenda is ID 2226 Woodside Gardens update.
The lady that's in the back there is a city employee.
Good evening. Hello.
Welcome, thank you.
My name is Kenneth Hart. I'm the senior regional for Fairstead. And one of the communities in my region is Woodside Gardens. And I'll let you introduce yourself.
Sure.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Diane Ramsod. I'm the regional for Woodside Gardens. I just came aboard about maybe 2 weeks ago.
Thanks for coming.
So we had a meeting with you guys, I think about 2-3 months ago. There was a list of things that residents brought to our attention. And I'm happy to say that for the most part, those are all done with the exception of one item. We got on them right away, took care of what needed to be taken care of, kept the resident informed of the progress. And there's just one item that's an underground dig that we chose to put into this year's budget that will be taken care of this year. But other than that, everything else is taken care of. We continue our partnership with the Annapolis Police Department and our security team on site to maintain the property, the grounds, and we've hired a full-time dedicated recertification specialist to handle the research so that one person is handling all the recertifications at the community as opposed to multiple people. And that seems to be going well with our residents too. And of course, we have a very great and productive resident service program that put on some really great programs this past fall and winter for residents and continue to do so going forward. That's my update. If you have any questions, I'm more than happy to answer them.
My first question is, I'm having a hard time hearing you. Could you move the mic a little bit closer?
Sure. Is that better?
Thank you.
Better? Okay.
Thank you. My next question is, the three of us are brand new to this committee.
Okay.
Well, one of us has served on the council in the past. Could you give us a little overview of your property? How many units? Do you have empty units? Can you give us those kind of
Sure.
details?
I joined Fairstead in April of this year,
Thank you.
so my information may not be as concrete. We have, we're a tax credit Section 8 combined unit community. We have 130 units on the property. One bedroom, 2 bedrooms, and 3 bedroom apartments. We currently have about 9 vacant units that we're trying to fill. We have applications on all units, but we're just working through the process of getting them qualified to move in onto the property. So you wanted to know occupancy, vacancy. What was the other thing you wanted to know?
That was it. Thank
That was it, okay.
130 units. 9 vacant. Thank you.
I wanted to know what is the price? I know you guys don't deal with them on like a regular basis because y'all are regional, but I get a lot of questions and concerns from Woodside. So I was asking about what is the protocol when a resident puts in like maintenance stuff that is like unresolved for a long time that's like should be emergency situations, and how are you guys addressing the communication between the residents and your property manager when you had I think at least 2 town halls where I was present, and the residents came there with a lot of questions and concerns as far as the disconnect between the property managers and them, and none of the things were being addressed.
So we have a senior property manager on site. Shanae Whitfield is her name. We also have a admin assistant at the front door to field those questions, take the work orders, and process them through our system. Emergency work orders should be dealt with immediately if they're emergency. Flooding, toilet stoppage, things of those natures. Other things are put into a queue to be dealt with as time allows. Communication between the office and the residents, from my point of view, has gotten better. It's not perfect, but it's gotten better. I invite residents to talk to the admin, the manager, and if they don't get any satisfaction there, there's me, there's the regional that they can also come to. I keep business cards at the property so that they can reach out to me should they need to. I haven't gotten very many complaints in the past couple of months since our last meeting, so it's my understanding that things are going well, the communication is going well. I have gotten, actually Friday, I got one email from a resident about a situation that we're working on. But other than that, I haven't gotten many more, haven't received many more complaints like that. We understood, or I understood, that there were issues with prior management, and so we're trying to work through those. Can't undo those situations and those problems. We can take them on today and try our best to resolve them, which is always my goal. My goal is to take the situation, stop it from going any higher, and resolve that issue as best I can at my level.
I also have gotten a lot of calls about like balances owed.
Yeah.
And them not knowing where the balances is coming from. And they have reached out to find out from the property manager, and it was no clarity there. So a lot of people are calling me like in crisis mode, basically saying, I got a letter and it's saying that I owe $10,000 or $12,000, and just recently I didn't have this, so I'm trying to figure out why I'm going through this. And then they go to the property manager and she's either not addressing it, or maybe not to their liking or what they're thinking. What type of things are they putting in place so that they can properly assist the residents that are having these issues, or if they really are those issues?
So the thing that's in place is that one person that we have to do your recertifications. Typically, when a resident comes in to recertify, that's when their rent is adjusted based on their current income, right? The goal, in the perfect world, they should do that annually and timely. It's when they don't do it, when they're an April 1st move-in and they don't complete their research until July 1st, then there's a retroactive adjustment that goes there. Or if, the longer they wait, the longer the adjustment period going back to. Because when we put in our system what their income is, HUD is going to send us back a discrepancy. If we say it was as of this date and HUD says, no, our record shows as of this date, we need to investigate it, verify when they did start work or when they switched jobs, and at that point we have to make that adjustment on their rent and report it back to HUD that it was corrected. So that's where a lot of the discrepancies are coming from. The late research, the non-research, and the misreporting of income or underreporting of income. When you look at a ledger in August of 25, that's talking about a rent adjustment from September of 24, it's kind of convoluted and kind of difficult to understand, let alone explain it to the point. And we run into the fact that prior management didn't do adjustments timely or correctly. And in that instance, or the resident will say, I've supplied you that information when you asked for it. So in that instance, when they say they supplied us the information, we then will go back and say, okay, give us the information again, so that we can go back to that period and make the correct adjustments. And that's where the break comes. They don't want to, they refuse to. We have to do something at that point, because HUD's telling us they made $25,000 that year, and they're saying, no, I only made $12,000 that year. So we have to make that adjustment retroactively. In some cases, when they can demonstrate that the error was on our behalf, then we'll eat those charges going backwards to make their ledgers right. But when they're reluctant to provide us with the information or to prove to us that this did happen or didn't happen, then we have to go with what HUD is reporting back to us as an error in income.
All right. Well, welcome. As you mentioned, you just joined in April of last year, obviously,
yes.
because we're in the new year. So it's almost about a year or so.
Almost a year.
I'm sure you've already heard or seen the history of the issues that we face here in Annapolis, particularly in our public housing communities. And I'm not certain if they gave you a packet, a pamphlet, a book, or whatever that may have been about the issues that our residents, particularly at this property, have faced. But I will bring up the mold infestation and the pest infestation, aside from just crime, pollution, those types of things. Do you all have a plan to address that long term? What is your vision here in the city of Annapolis for us in providing the best housing possible for those residents, our residents?
So Fairstead's policy is to provide the best possible housing, the best housing for all of our residents. When we are made aware of a problem, we jump on it as quickly as we can. Something as big as mold, we try to jump on as quickly as we know about it. Often we're not informed about it until we encounter it via an inspection or some other occurrence happening in the unit. But once we determine that there is mold, we determine the source and remediate it and make whatever repairs necessary so that it doesn't occur further. Pest control, we have a regular rotating pest control program at Woodside. Every 2 weeks, we get so many units treated, plus any big issues or reported issues that are not on our regular rotation cycle. So we try to tackle pest control that way. A lot of our pest control issues are household, what's the word I want? Housekeeping related. So we loop in our resident services people to kind of work with that resident to improve their housekeeping as well. The two go hand in hand. But we try. And if it's a really bad issue, for example, a bed bug issue, we don't use our regular pest control company for that. We get an expert in to treat the bed bugs. They come in, they inspect that unit, the 2 units adjoining it, above and below as well, so that we don't see that they spread. If they do spread, then we repeat up and down and left and right as well too, to try to take care of the issue with bed bugs as quickly as possible. In security, we have a great reputation and relationship with the Annapolis Police Department. We have our own security on property, and they work in conjunction with the police department if they need additional assistance on site. We actually have a meeting every week with both security and Annapolis PD to discuss any current issues or problem areas that we as management would like them to pay attention to on the site.
All right. Just so that the people are aware, you said Fairstead, they're new to this?
No.
Okay, just because
I didn't say that at all.
I want to make sure you were talking about just yourself and not
Yeah,
the
just me.
actual company.
I've been here since April, so I'm not that new, but I'm new.
Okay.
New to Fairstead, not new to the business.
Okay. That's good. Yeah, hopefully not. We need some experience around here.
Right.
So when it comes to a concern that I heard from a resident, they said that they're not allowed to sit outside of their property on the steps, if you will. Is that true, or is that not true? Because that's a little concerning that families are not allowed or able, if this is true, to enjoy their space. So I
So
just want to.
they may not be allowed to sit on the steps because it impedes people from coming and going. You know, often when I visit and I walk a building or go to a unit to look at something, you know, I'm climbing over someone. So we don't let them sit on the steps. But at benches outside, yes, they can sit. We have playgrounds and areas for them to sit that they're more than welcome to sit on.
Are you referring to the steps outside of the property?
The steps to get into the building?
Yes, to get into the building.
Into the building, yes.
Okay. I will say that if someone is in the way, I think saying excuse me or hey, may I get by without making a family feel that they're not allowed to in a not welcoming way would be great, especially since
yeah.
that was brought to our attention. I do want to just make sure that they feel still that they can enjoy their space.
So absolutely. We have a playground, we have a garden, basketball courts. We have a community room they can come into with a little kitchenette that's stocked with cold water and beverages. We have a computer lab, an after-school program with the classroom. We have a lot of amenities that residents can participate in. And we do that so that they're not sitting on the steps, impeding the entry and exit of the building.
One last question. Do you guys have anything in place for when you do get the EIV reports from HUD about a concerning resident and they have all the paperwork to say that it wasn't them and it was definitely the property manager's fault? Do y'all have anything in place to make that less, like the problem from continuing? Because if you have 15 here and it continues to be 15 every time versus putting something in place that it can reduce it to maybe 10 from the 15.
I think that's part of our dedicated compliance person on site. You're dealing with one person. Everybody's dealing with the same person, giving their information to the same person, which should go into their file so they can be entered into the system to assure that, I didn't give it to her. I can't come in and say I gave it to Diana 3 weeks ago, and where is it? Where did she put it? So it's going to one person. It makes it into their file, and we can enter it in the system that way. And we also give them copies of what they give us, so that they have it, and we can stamp and initial that we received it on a specific date, so that they know that we have it as well too. So that should minimize, if not eliminate, any miscommunications or misguided paperwork.
Okay, thank you. Y'all got any more questions? Got questions, Gavin?
Are those rules listed anywhere in maybe a tenant rights or any agreement so that residents know that they are, just one example, that they're not quote unquote allowed to sit on those steps?
I believe it is in our house rules.
Okay, so they're in the house
Yes.
rules. Then that's something that we will direct them to.
Yes.
And I take it that's information
Part
they
of
can
their
find
lease.
at the office.
The house rules are part of their lease agreement.
Okay, so look in their lease and you'll see you're not allowed. Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
Yes, sir.
Can we get y'all information,
Sure.
please?
I have some business cards.
Okay,
You want-
we can get a card too. Always the card.
Sure.
And thank you both, if I may, Madam Chair, thank you both for joining us today and being a part of what we're bringing here for our residents in Annapolis.
Absolutely.
Thank you for having us.
Absolutely.
My card has a New York number, 212 number, but I am local. The company's headquartered in New York. So if you call me, I'll answer on this set.
Thank you.
Thank you
you.
so much.
Thank you.
Have a good night.
Thank you again.
Saying that we have no further business, I'll take a motion to adjournment.
So moved.
Seconded.
All in favor?
Aye.
Blessings.